So I'm 32, and I was engaged to this girl, Sarah. She's 29, and we'd been together for 6 years. We even got engaged like 3 weeks ago. I thought everything was going smooth, you know? But wow, things turned upside down in a way I did not expect. About a month ago, I came home from work. It was a long-ass day, and I was exhausted. You know how it is. I just wanted to chill, maybe watch something, relax. Anyway, I walk in, and Sarah's sitting at the kitchen table with her buddy, Mark. Now, Mark's been around forever. Like, they've been friends since they were kids or whatever, so I don't think anything of it. I kiss Sarah on the cheek, say hi, and give Mark a fist bump. I ask if he's doing okay, just being polite, right? Mark's not one to turn down chilling, but this time he just looks all serious and says, "Nah, man, I'm good. I actually need to talk to you about something." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, this must be serious." I look at Sarah, and she's got this kind of serious face on too. So I sit down with them like, "All right, what's going on?" Sarah then says Mark's going through a rough time. She starts explaining that Mark lost his job and his apartment, and now he's got nowhere to go. You know, typical sob story. I mean, I felt bad for the guy, but I'm thinking, what's this got to do with me? Then she drops it on me. I was thinking maybe Mark could stay with us for a few weeks, just until he gets back on his feet. Now listen, I'm not heartless. I've known Mark a while, and it's not like I have anything against the guy. So I said, yeah, it's cool. But I made it clear. I told him straight up, as long as you help out around the house, it's fine. Just don't make a mess and contribute when you can. He seemed super grateful, like he even got up and gave me a big hug, thanking me over and over. The first week, it was fine, like totally fine. Mark was keeping to himself mostly, and he was even doing chores. It was actually kind of nice to have someone else around to help out with stuff, and he didn't complain or anything. We'd watch some TV, and everything seemed chill. I was even thinking, man, maybe this won't be so bad after all. But then, man, things started going downhill fast. The second week, things started to go downhill fast. I started noticing stuff around the apartment, little things, but they added up. Like, his dirty clothes would just be lying around, not just in his room, but like in the living room, under the couch cushions, socks, shirts, whatever, and it started to get annoying. So I talked to him, being all polite about it. "Hey man, can you clean up after yourself a bit more? This is still our place, you know?" He apologized, said he was sorry, promised to do better. I figured that was the end of it, but nope. Things got worse fast. A few days later, I'm going to the bathroom one morning, and not to be gross, but the toilet was nasty. There was dried up vomit on the seat like he had puked and didn't even bother cleaning up. I couldn't believe it. Who does that? At this point, I'm realizing something's off with Mark. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but I started noticing more and more. His room started to stink, and his attitude shifted. He was always tired, moody, just off. I confronted Sarah about it, asking if she'd noticed, and she brushes it off like it's no big deal. "He's going through a rough time," she kept saying. "Yeah, okay, but so are we. If he's trashing the place," and then it got to the point where I couldn't ignore it anymore. I came home from work one day, and I swear the whole apartment smelled bad. I could already feel my blood boiling as I walked down the hallway to the guest room, knowing exactly what I was about to find. I barged into the room, and there's Mark, just lying on the bed. The place was a mess, clothes everywhere, and the smell, man, it was like he hadn't cleaned the room in days. I completely lost it. I started yelling at him, telling him he needed to clean up, contribute, or he's out. No more playing nice. I gave him 2 days to clean up his act or leave. Sarah, of course, tries to calm me down, saying I'm overreacting, but I wasn't having it. I'd been patient enough, and he was totally taking advantage of the situation. And you know what he does instead of apologizing? This guy stands up and I swear he just lunges at me, like out of nowhere, full on attacks me. I didn't even have time to react. Next thing I know, I'm slammed into the wall, and everything goes black. When I came to, there were flashing lights everywhere. It took me a second to realize it wasn't a dream. 2 cops were standing over me, one shining a flashlight right in my face, and I could hear Sarah's voice in the background. I tried to sit up, but my head was pounding like crazy, and I felt so disoriented. The cop helps me up, and I ask what the hell's going on. He tells me that they got a call from Sarah saying I'd gotten violent and attacked her and Mark. I'm like, what the hell? I attacked them? That didn't even make sense, but they weren't interested in my side of the story. They grabbed me, dragged me outside, and all I could see was Sarah and Mark talking to the cops like they were the victims. I barely remember getting into the squad car, but I do remember looking at Sarah, and she wouldn't even look at me. She just stood there next to Mark, looking all upset like I was the problem. I felt like I was living in some nightmare. Everything was a blur after that. I don't even remember much of the drive to the station. All I know is I ended up in a holding cell, my head pounding, not sure how the hell this all went down so fast. So there I was, sitting in the holding cell, head pounding, trying to figure out what the hell just happened. I still couldn't believe it. 1 minute, I'm in my own home, and the next, I'm getting hauled away like a criminal. I kept replaying the scene in my head. Sarah called the cops on me for what? Because I told Mark to clean up his act or leave? None of it made sense. I was stuck in that damn cell for hours, nobody told me anything, and the whole time I was just stewing in my anger. I couldn't stop thinking about how I was the one who got knocked out. Yet, somehow, I was the bad guy. When they finally let me go, they acted like they were doing me a favor. "You're lucky we're not pressing charges," one of the cops said. Charges for what? I didn't even do anything. Anyway, I called my dad to come pick me up. I wasn't about to go back to the apartment just yet. I needed some time to cool down and process everything. My dad, of course, had a million questions, but I wasn't ready to talk about it yet. All I told him was that I needed a ride, and that Sarah and Mark had basically turned on me. He could tell something serious had gone down, but he didn't push it. The whole drive, my mind was racing. How could Sarah do this to me? We'd been together for 6 years, 6 damn years, and she pulls this. It wasn't like we had some perfect fairy tale relationship or whatever, but I thought we were solid. This wasn't just some minor argument. This was betrayal, pure and simple. She had my back for 6 years, and now suddenly Mark shows up, and she sides with him over me. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. When I got back to my dad's place, I crashed on the couch. I didn't have the energy to explain everything yet, and honestly, I didn't even know how to. What was I supposed to say? "Oh, hey Dad, guess what? My fiancée called the cops on me because her loser friend decided to throw me into a wall?" Yeah, that would go over well. After a couple of days, I decided I needed to get my stuff from the apartment. I wasn't planning on sticking around to have another confrontation with Sarah. I was done with her. But, of course, when I get there, she's sitting on the couch like nothing happened. I swear my blood was boiling the second I saw her. She had the nerve to try and act all sad, with her eyes red and puffy like she'd been crying nonstop. But to me, it was just an act. Before I could even say anything, she jumps up and starts talking, trying to explain herself. "Please, just listen to me. I didn't know what else to do. Mark was panicking. And I cut her off right there. I don't want to hear it, Sarah. You had a choice and you chose Mark over me. What else is there to say?" She kept begging, but I was done. I told her to pack her stuff and leave. I didn't even care about the details anymore. I just wanted her out of my life. She tried pulling the "but I still love you" card, but at that point, it didn't mean anything to me. Love doesn't involve calling the cops on your partner and lying to protect someone else. That's not love, that's betrayal. It took everything in me not to lose my cool again. I mean, seriously, how does someone you trust for 6 years turn on you like that? I had spent so much time thinking we were building something real, something solid, but clearly I was wrong. I told her to get her stuff and get out, and she did. But not without trying to plead her case a million more times. Once she was gone, I thought maybe I'd feel some relief, like, okay, the toxic part of this situation is out of the picture. But honestly, I just felt empty. I sat there in my own apartment, wondering how the hell it all fell apart so quickly. I started doubting everything, our entire relationship, the engagement, all of it. Had she been lying to me this whole time? Was Mark always more important than me? Then a few days later, Sarah started blowing up my phone again. At first I ignored it, but after the 50th missed call, I figured I'd hear what she had to say. She's crying again, telling me how she's sorry, how she didn't mean for any of this to happen. She told me she panicked when Mark knocked me out and that she didn't want him to get in trouble because he was already on probation. Apparently, they thought it would be easier to lie and say I was the one who attacked them. Yeah, because that makes so much sense, right? I didn't even know what to say to that. Easier. Easier for who? It sure as hell wasn't easier for me. I spent the night in jail because of their lies. I got hit with the worst headache I've ever had. I was throwing up, dizzy, couldn't even stand up without feeling like I was going to pass out. So I went to the hospital, and guess what? Concussion. They told me I'd probably been concussed the night Mark knocked me out, but because I didn't get checked out right away, I made it worse by not resting. So now I'm stuck at home for at least a month, and all I can do is think about what a mess my life has become. I lost my fiancé, my trust in someone I thought I loved, and now I'm physically wrecked because of the whole thing. And the cherry on top? Sarah keeps trying to come over, leaving messages saying she wants to talk, but what is there to talk about? She made her choice. She lied to protect Mark. Now I'm just here trying to figure out how the hell to move forward from this. Do I completely ghost her? Do I give her the closure she's begging for? Part of me wants to just disappear and never hear from her again. But another part of me, the part that still loves her, can't help but feel like I need to do something. But what? It's been about a week since everything went down. I've been stuck at home recovering from this damn concussion, and let me tell you, being trapped in your own head with nothing but your thoughts and a messed up relationship to dwell on is not the kind of rest I needed. So Sarah's still been trying to reach out, like constantly. It's getting ridiculous. I've got messages from her, her mom, her sister, all saying how sorry she is and how she just wants to see me and explain everything. But at this point, what's left to explain? She already told me the worst of it, right? But every time I ignore her, I feel this weird pit in my stomach, like I'm questioning if maybe I'm making the wrong call. You ever get that feeling where you know something's the right move, but it still eats at you anyway? A few days ago, I get this text from her mom, and this is where things take a pretty messed up turn. Her mom tells me Sarah tried to overdose on painkillers. Yeah, I know, that hit me like a brick. She said Sarah was in the hospital and that she was asking to see me. My first reaction? Honestly, I felt guilty. I mean, I ghosted her for a week straight and now she's in the hospital. But then the anger kicked in. Was this another way to get sympathy? I know that sounds harsh, but after what she did, lying to the cops, throwing me under the bus for Mark of all people, I couldn't help but question everything she says or does now. I kept thinking, is this just some play to make me feel like I'm the one at fault? Or was she really at that low point? I didn't text her mom back right away. I just sat there, phone in hand, staring at the message. My mind was going a million miles an hour. A part of me wanted to rush to the hospital to check on her, see if she was okay. But another part of me, the part that's still pissed and hurt, wanted to stay as far away from that whole mess as possible. What would even happen if I went? Would it just be another round of excuses and I didn't mean to's? Or would I find out that she really was sorry, that she really did hit rock bottom? So I talked to my mom. She's been staying with me while I recover, helping me out and all that. She's been amazing through this whole thing, honestly. She asked me how I was feeling, and I straight up told her about the text from Sarah's mom. And you know what my mom said? She told me I needed to think long and hard before making any decisions, that I should be careful with whatever move I make next. But she also reminded me that Sarah's actions have consequences, that what she did wasn't just a little mistake. It was something huge, and it nearly ruined my life. She told me that if I do decide to see her, I need to be sure I'm ready for whatever comes next. It's not just a visit. It's a choice that could open up old wounds and drag me right back into the chaos I'm trying to escape from. That's the part that got me. My mom's always been the rational one, and when she said that, I knew she was right. I wasn't ready to face Sarah again. Not yet. Not when I'm still piecing my life back together. So I decided to stay home, ignore the texts, and keep focusing on healing, physically and mentally. But it's not that easy. Every day I wake up and check my phone, wondering if I'm going to get another update from her mom, wondering if Sarah's okay, if she's still in the hospital, or if she's moved on from this whole thing. I keep thinking back to all the good times we had, the 6 years we spent together before everything fell apart. It's like this constant battle in my head between what I know I should do and what my heart still feels for her. Then yesterday, something else happened. Out of the blue, Mark sends me a message. Can you believe that? After everything, this guy has the nerve to text me. I almost threw my phone across the room when I saw his name pop up, but instead, I opened the message. It was short and to the point. Hey man, I'm sorry for what happened. I didn't mean to hurt you, and I hope you can forgive me. Forgive him? I read that message over and over, and all I could think was, are you kidding me? This dude knocked me out, got me arrested, and now he wants my forgiveness? For what? Because he didn't mean to hurt me? What does that even mean? You don't accidentally ram someone into a wall and leave them unconscious. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. I didn't respond. I couldn't. There was nothing I could say to him that wouldn't just make me even angrier, so I blocked his number and tried to move on. But his message still bugs me. It's like he's trying to get off the hook with a half-assed apology, like that'll somehow make everything okay again. And Sarah, she's still out there waiting for me to reach out, waiting for me to come to the hospital and see her. And I'm just here, stuck in the middle of this whole mess, trying to figure out what the hell I'm supposed to do next. Do I let them back into my life, or do I walk away for good? Because right now, all I feel is this mix of anger, sadness, and... yeah, I'll admit it. Guilt. As much as I don't want to admit it, I still care about Sarah, and that's the hardest part. I can't just switch that off, even after everything she's done. But caring about her doesn't change what happened. It doesn't change the fact that she lied to the cops and put me in jail. It doesn't change the fact that Mark, her so-called friend, attacked me in my own home, and she did nothing to stop it. And it sure as hell doesn't change the fact that I'm sitting here alone with a concussion while they get to move on with their lives. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I've got no clue what the next step is, but I know one thing for sure. I'm not rushing back into anything. I've been burned once, and I'm not about to let it happen again. But damn, man, I just wish things didn't have to be this complicated. Alright, so things took another wild turn. I thought I was done dealing with all this crap, but guess what? Turns out life had other plans. I've been lying low, trying to figure out what to do next. I mean, the whole situation still has me all twisted up, but just when I thought I could get some peace, another bomb drops. Not literally, but you get what I mean. A few days after Mark's pathetic apology, I'm at home, minding my own business, trying to recover. My head still isn't right from the concussion, and every little thing feels like a damn chore. You know how it is when you're stuck at home with nothing to do but overthink everything. So I'm sitting there, and my phone starts buzzing again. At first I was like, nope, not dealing with this. But then I see the name on the screen. It wasn't Sarah, her mom, or Mark. It was someone I wasn't expecting at all. It was Sarah's sister, Lucy. Now, Lucy and I have never been super close. We got along fine, but she wasn't really part of my life outside of family get-togethers or holidays. So for her to text me out of the blue? Yeah, that raised a red flag. I opened the message, and it says something like, "Hey Joe, I need to talk to you. It's about Sarah. Please don't ignore me." I wasn't in the mood for more drama, but Lucy wasn't the type to stir things up just for the sake of it, so I text her back telling her I'm listening. She hits me with this whole long message about how Sarah's not doing well at all, how the overdose wasn't just a cry for help or some ploy to get attention. She tells me Sarah's been in a really dark place since I cut her off, and she's barely eating, barely talking to anyone. Apparently, she's seeing a therapist now, and things aren't looking good. I don't know what to do with that information. I mean, yeah, I feel bad, obviously. I don't want to see anyone, let alone someone I spent 6 years with, go through something like that. But at the same time, I keep thinking back to what Sarah did. It's not like I can just forget the whole thing and go back to how things were. That's not how it works. Lucy's message keeps going on about how Sarah's been trying to make amends, how she's regretting everything, and that she really needs to talk to me. I'm sitting there staring at my phone, wondering if maybe I should just give her a chance to explain herself. But every time I think about it, I remember how betrayed I felt, how she chose Mark over me in the moment that mattered most. That's not something you can easily get past. So I asked Lucy straight up, "Do you think she's being genuine, or is this just another way to get sympathy?" I know it sounds harsh, but after everything, I had to ask. Lucy responds pretty quickly, saying, "I've never seen her like this, Joe. She's not faking it. She's really struggling, and I think she's realized how much she messed up." That hit me harder than I expected. Like, maybe she really does regret everything. But even if she does that change anything? Can you really forgive someone after something like this? I'm still not sure. So I told Lucy I needed some time to think, and she said she understood, but she hopes I'll talk to Sarah soon. Here's the thing. Part of me wants to see her. I want to hear her out, see if she's really sorry or if it's just more excuses. But the other part of me is like, dude, why would you put yourself through that again? I've been going back and forth with myself ever since I got that message. It's like I'm stuck in this loop of wanting to move on, but also feeling like I need some kind of closure. So I tried to distract myself. I went out for a walk, hoping some fresh air would clear my head. But, of course, as I'm walking, I run into Mark. Because of course I do. This guy has the worst timing ever. He's standing there like he's been waiting for me or something. I thought about just walking right past him, but he calls out, "Joe, wait." Against my better judgment, I stopped. I didn't want another confrontation, but I wasn't about to run away like a coward either. Mark comes up to me, and before I can even say anything, he starts talking. He's all like, "Look, man, I know you hate me right now, and I get it. I really screwed up, but I just want to explain myself." I didn't really want to hear his excuses, but I let him talk anyway. He goes on about how he was going through a rough time, how losing his job and getting kicked out of his place messed with his head. He admits that he was out of line, that attacking me was the worst thing he could have done, and that he's been trying to figure out how to make it right. But then he dropped something I wasn't expecting. He tells me that he and Sarah haven't spoken since the night I got arrested. Apparently, after I kicked her out, she cut off contact with him too. Mark looked genuinely upset when he told me this, like he actually cared about her and didn't know what to do now that she wasn't speaking to him. I didn't know what to make of it. I mean, on one hand, good. Sarah finally realized Mark's a toxic presence in her life. But on the other hand, why didn't she realize that sooner? Why did it take all this chaos for her to see what kind of person Mark really is? I didn't say much to Mark. I just told him, "You can't fix this. What's done is done." He looked defeated, like he knew I was right but didn't want to accept it. He said he was sorry again and walked off, leaving me standing there with even more questions than I started with. So now I'm left with this mess. Sarah's apparently in a really dark place. Mark's out of the picture, supposedly, and I'm here trying to figure out if I should reach out to her or just keep moving on. I don't know what the right thing to do is. Every time I think I've made a decision, something else comes up, and I'm back to square one. It's like, do I want to risk getting hurt again, or do I just let it all go and focus on myself? I've been trying to weigh the pros and cons, but no matter what, there's no easy answer. Either way, someone gets hurt, whether it's me, Sarah, or both of us. So yeah, that's where I'm at, stuck in limbo, unsure of what to do next. Part of me thinks I should just cut ties completely and move on with my life, but another part of me feels like I need to see this through, to find out if Sarah really has changed. It's a mess, man. A real mess. And I have no idea how to get out of it. So after that run-in with Mark and Lucy's message about Sarah, I spent the next couple of days just sitting in my apartment, trying to clear my head. Every time I thought I had things figured out, I'd get stuck again, second-guessing myself. Honestly, it was driving me insane, but then something happened that I wasn't expecting. Sarah reached out to me directly again, but this time, she sent me a long text instead of calling or showing up at my door. I wasn't sure if I should open it. I stared at my phone for a good 5 minutes, just trying to decide if I even wanted to read it. But curiosity got the best of me, and I opened it. Her message started off with an apology, a real one this time, not just one of those "I'm sorry, but" types of apologies. She said she knew she messed up in ways she couldn't fix. She admitted that choosing Mark over me in that moment was the biggest mistake of her life, and that she doesn't expect me to forgive her. Then she went on to say how lost she's been since everything went down, how she's been trying to make sense of it all, but she realizes now that no amount of excuses can change what happened. I could tell this wasn't some half-assed apology. She was laying it all out there, telling me how she's been going to therapy, trying to figure out why she acted the way she did, and how she's working on herself. Sarah said she didn't want to hurt me anymore, and that she wasn't reaching out to beg for me back. She just needed to say her piece. She ended the message by saying she hoped one day I could at least understand why she did what she did, but that she knew we might never be okay again. After reading it, I had to sit down for a minute and just breathe. It's weird, getting an apology like that after everything that's happened. Part of me felt relieved, like maybe I could finally let go of some of the anger I'd been holding on to. But another part of me was still like, is this enough? Does this really change anything? I didn't respond right away. I needed to think. I mean, yeah, it was a good apology, but did that mean I was ready to talk to her again? Was I ready to open that door? Because once you open it, you can't just close it again, right? That's when things get complicated. Anyway, later that night I talked to my mom about it. I hadn't told her about the latest text yet, so I filled her in on everything Sarah had said. My mom's reaction surprised me a little. She didn't immediately jump to, "You should forgive her," or "You should move on." Instead, she told me something that stuck with me. She said, "Joe, sometimes people do terrible things, but that doesn't mean they're terrible people. You have to decide if this is something you can move past, not for her sake, but for your own." And that got me thinking. I wasn't just holding on to the anger because I didn't want to forgive Sarah. I was holding on to it because part of me was scared of what would happen if I did. Like, if I let go of that anger, what's left? How do you move forward when the thing that's been driving you for weeks is suddenly gone? So I sat with that for a while. I didn't respond to Sarah's text for a couple of days. I kept reading it over and over, trying to figure out how I felt. And then, one night, something clicked. I realized I wasn't mad anymore. Like, sure, I was still hurt, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon. But the anger, it was gone. I wasn't burning with it like I had been before. It was weird, honestly. I didn't expect to feel that shift, but there it was. That's when I decided to respond to Sarah. I kept it short, but I was honest. I told her I appreciated the apology, that I could tell she was being genuine, and that I hoped she was serious about working on herself. I said I didn't know what the future held for us, but that I wasn't ready to completely cut her off. I didn't promise anything. I just left the door cracked open a bit. Her response came almost immediately. She thanked me, said it meant more than I knew, and that she wasn't expecting anything from me. She just wanted me to know she was trying to do better, and honestly, that was enough for me right then. I wasn't ready to dive back into anything, but at least it felt like things were starting to settle, like maybe, just maybe, I could start to move forward. But just when I thought I had some peace, the universe threw another wrench into things. Out of nowhere, I get a message from Mark. Yep, Mark again. This time, though, it wasn't some half-assed apology or plea for forgiveness. No, this time he sent me this long, rambling message about how he and Sarah had been seeing each other behind my back for a while. He said he didn't want to carry the secret anymore, that he felt like he needed to come clean. I couldn't believe it. I mean, yeah, I had my suspicions when everything went down, but to have it confirmed, it was like getting punched in the gut all over again. I sat there staring at my phone, reading his words over and over. They'd been messing around while I was at work, while I was busting my ass to make sure we had a roof over our heads, and she had the nerve to play the victim, to beg for my forgiveness after everything. At that moment, everything shifted again. The anger came flooding back, not just at Sarah, but at myself too. How had I been so blind? How had I let them both make a fool out of me like that? I didn't respond to Mark. I couldn't. What was the point? But I did send Sarah one final text. It wasn't long, and I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told her I knew about her and Mark, that I knew they'd been lying to me for who knows how long, and that I was done. Really done this time. I told her I didn't need any more explanations or apologies. I just wanted her out of my life for good. She didn't respond. Not that night, not the next day, not ever. And honestly, I think that's for the best. Sometimes things get so broken that there's no fixing them, and I guess this was one of those times. So yeah, that's where I'm at now. It's over for real this time. No more what-ifs, no more second chances. Just me, moving forward one step at a time. It's been a few weeks since I sent that last text to Sarah. The silence has been deafening. No more calls, no more texts, no more apologies. Just quiet. And you know what? It's kind of peaceful. I've been focusing on myself, on healing. My concussion is finally gone, and I'm back at work. It's good to have something to keep my mind occupied, to have a routine again. I've even started going to the gym, trying to get back in shape. It feels good to be taking care of myself, to be reclaiming my life. Some days are harder than others, of course. There are still moments when I think about Sarah, when I miss the good times we had. But then I remember the betrayal, the lies, the hurt, and I know that I deserve better. I deserve someone who will choose me, who will stand by me, no matter what. I've learned a lot through all of this. I've learned that trust is precious, and once it's broken, it's hard to rebuild. I've learned that sometimes the people you think you know best can surprise you, and not always in a good way. And most importantly, I've learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I've been through hell and back, and I'm still standing. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm not afraid anymore. I'm open to new possibilities, new relationships. But this time, I'm going to be more careful. I'm going to take my time, listen to my gut, and trust my instincts. I'm not going to let anyone take advantage of me again. This whole experience has been like a wildfire, burning everything in its path. But sometimes, you need that fire to clear the way for new growth. And that's what I'm focusing on now. Growth, healing, and finding my own path. It's not easy, but it's worth it. Because I know that somewhere out there, there's someone who will see me, truly see me, and love me for who I am. And until then, I'm gonna keep walking forward with my head held high. The elders say that the wind carries whispers of truth. I'm listening to those whispers now, learning from the past and looking towards the future. It's a new dawn, a new beginning, and I'm ready for it. Story 2, Bride Ghosted Me, is the title of this tale. She is upset because she had a bachelor party with her college ex 2 weeks before to our wedding. I canceled. Hello everyone. Please click the subscribe button if you like the article. It keeps this adventure going strong and means the world. Let's begin the video now. I'll begin by saying, just like the original poster does. This page serves mostly as a rant for me. You may be able to identify whether you have ever had someone you love betraying your trust in a major way. To be honest, I'm not sure how to feel anymore. I'm writing this while sitting in an empty flat. When? I assumed I would be married by now, 2 weeks ago. But this is where it all started. I woke up like any other day 2 weeks ago. Her side of the bed was vacant as I reached over to it. I didn't give it much thought at first. Perhaps she had an early morning errand or went for a workout. I didn't start to feel strange until I woke up, brushed my teeth, and noticed that her side of the bathroom remained unaltered. Since previous night, she had not been present. I attempted to contact her and got her voicemail. "Hey, where are you?" I texted. "You weren't home when I woke up." No answer. As the hours went by, I became anxious. Me? I kept myself updated at all times. If she had a destination, if nothing else, she would text. Her phone was still off by the afternoon, and I was quickly losing my mind. My thoughts were racing. Was she all right? Had she been harmed? I gave her relatives a call. I'm thinking she might have gone there. Her mother seemed equally worried and had no idea where she was. According to her father, she made no mention of leaving. I became pretty anxious at that point. This was more than a little misunderstanding if her own parents were unaware of her whereabouts. I then contacted her pals. Nobody responded. I was even more irritated by those who left me unread. When we went out to meals or parties, they were usually talking. Then all of a sudden they stopped talking. I was going crazy. I was pacing the living room by the evening. Do I need to contact the police? But what if anything had gone wrong? That night, I hardly slept at all. I had my phone stuck to my hand. My heart jumped whenever a notification appeared. However, that was never her. About 4 in the morning, really worn out. Out of habit, I opened Instagram and scrolled aimlessly. Then I noticed it. A group shot of her college pals smiling and sipping cocktails at a pub. There she was, in the forefront. She was grinning as if nothing were bothering her. I felt sick to my stomach. I kept looking at the photo, thinking I was mistaken, but it was her. The post included a tag for the pub. I touched on it out of curiosity and discovered it wasn't even local. Spain was the location. Spain? My fiancé. Without notifying me, the person I was set to marry in 2 weeks had boarded an aircraft and gone halfway across the world. My brain seemed incapable of processing it. It wasn't real. It isn't possible. But there she was, smiling with her pals as if nothing had happened. No call, no message, no justification. Nothing. I was enraged. Who, after all, does that? How can you simply vanish from your lover without saying anything? I texted her right away. I am aware of your whereabouts. This wedding is off. Therefore, you had better board the next aircraft home. Even if I came out as harsh, I didn't care. Was there anything more I should have said? I sent her a heartfelt follow-up note expressing my disappointment. But did she answer? Obviously not. She hadn't turned on her phone yet. In the end, I spent hours looking at the ceiling while mentally reliving every aspect of our relationship in an attempt to understand how we got here. Her parents phoned me again the next day to inquire about her whereabouts. They were just as astonished as I was, Spain, when I told them what I had discovered. Her mother inquired, as if she were going to cry. Her father simply said something about fucking pals. I wasn't holding my breath when they said they would try to get in touch with her. I was no longer even depressed at this time. I was just furious. The lady I thought I knew, the love of my life, had chosen to celebrate with her friends abroad rather than join me here. The wedding was no longer the main focus. Respect was at issue. She eventually phoned that night. She spoke calmly, as if nothing had occurred. "Hey," she remarked nonchalantly, as though there weren't going to be a huge consequence. I let loose before she had even finished speaking. "Are you aware of what you have done?" My voice trembled as I spoke. "You vanished. Something has happened to you," I thought. "You have no idea how terrified I was." She sent out a frustrated sigh, as if I were exaggerating. She stated it wasn't that big of an issue. "It's not that significant." I was shocked to hear that. She continued by saying that her college pals had spent months organizing this unexpected vacation. They had already made all the reservations and paid for everything, and they only informed her about it last week. At first, she was reluctant to go. They insisted and didn't want to squander the money, despite her allegation. I questioned her about why she hadn't told me directly. She said, "Because I knew you'd overreact." I was eager to go. I was worthy. It's been years since I went on a trip with my buddies. Exaggerate. I had no idea how to respond to that. I was in too much shock to shout. I asked her directly, "How about our nuptials? Do you consider that?" She dismissed it. "Before then, I'll return. Only 2 weeks remain." Calm down. Calm down. I was triggered by that word. "If you don't return tomorrow, there won't be a wedding to return to," I informed her. What did she say? "I'm staying, as I've previously stated. Take care of it." She hung up after that. I spent the remainder of the night wallowing in my rage, albeit I'm not proud of what I did next. While I was here, cleaning up her mess, I kept thinking of her sitting in some pub in Spain, laughing uncontrollably. It made my blood boil. I made the choice at that point. I wasn't anticipating her return. The wedding was being canceled by me. She desired to have a party. All right, she may have a good time. She didn't want to party her way back into my life, yet that was all she wanted. I felt empty when I woke up the morning following that terrible call. I had hardly slept at all. I kept replaying our talk in my mind. I couldn't stop wondering, how did this happen? We were choosing cake flavors and completing the guest list only a few days ago. I was now attempting to persuade myself that this was not all a horrible dream while I stared at the ceiling. The first thing I did after dragging myself out of bed was look at my phone. No missed calls, no texts, and no excuses. She would not make contact. I believe I was already aware of it in my heart. Even though I felt like striking myself in the face, I resumed browsing Instagram. More images, more tales. This time, she was drinking hand in hand with one of her friends at a beach. She had such a joyful expression. At that moment, I wasn't even jealous. All I felt was anger. She wasn't only having a good time as I was going crazy, it was that she appeared unconcerned. Not about me. It's not about us. I made the decision that I would not wait for her to change her mind. I texted the wedding coordinator first thing in the morning. "We must speak." I composed. The words felt unreal to type, as if I were discussing someone else's wedding. She answered very instantly, most likely thinking I made a last-minute adjustment to the seating map. She had no idea. I then wrote a message for our visitors. After what seemed like an eternity of staring at it and mentally reworking the words, I eventually typed them down. For a period. "Hello, everyone. I would like to inform you that the wedding has been canceled. Please don't get in touch with me about this at this time. I need time to take it all in. I appreciate your understanding." I didn't elaborate. That was the most I felt I owed anyone. I pushed send, and the messages began to come in. Most were understanding. "I'm really sad to hear this." Or, "Tell me if you require anything." Some, however, requested specifics. "What took place? Are you okay?" they asked. I choose to disregard them. I wasn't prepared to discuss it. Word had spread by the afternoon. I got a call from her parents. Their confused voices falter. "What's happening?" her mother inquired. "Why is it being said that the wedding has been called off?" From the minute she vanished until that terrible phone call, I described everything. I informed them of the Instagram postings, the texts, and the obvious disrespect for the relationship we had developed. Her mother sobbed. Her father remained silent, only whispered that she needed to mature. I wasn't holding my breath, but they said they would attempt to reach her. Why would she listen to them if she hadn't listened to me? She gave another call that night. I let it ring out this time. I didn't want to listen to her justifications. Instead, she texted, "For a period. Please respond. All I want to do is chat." I didn't respond. I began making the difficult decisions the following day, removing the venue, the florist, and the photographer. To be honest, it was therapeutic, even though I expected it to hurt more. With every cancellation, a small amount of control was regained. Her behavior was no longer going to control my life. The wedding coordinator was sympathetic. She said, "I'm sorry to hear this. If there is anything I can do, please let me know." The sellers were less considerate. It hurt that some had such high cancellation fees, but I thought I would take care of it later, after I was done. Packing up her belongings was the only task remaining. I crammed everything into boxes as fast as I could because I couldn't stand to look at them. Her books, her outfits. She even insisted on keeping the dumb little trinkets on the coffee table. Everything was moved into the extra room, out of mind, out of sight. Her parents called again that evening. They had managed to reach her at last. They stated she wanted to go home because she was angry. "Give her an opportunity to explain," her mother begged. "She adores you." However, love was insufficient. She wouldn't have done this in the first place if she truly loved me. She is welcome to return. "She won't be coming back to me," I stated in a chilly tone. 2 days later, she appeared. Her automobile pulled into the driveway, and I spotted it. In the trunk was her suitcase. Not even the door was opened by me. I remained within while she repeatedly knocked and called my name. "Please, let's have a conversation," she yelled. "This is something we can resolve." I nearly gave in for a second as her voice broke. Nearly. Her chuckling in the Instagram posts and the phone conversation, however, came back to me. How she instructed me to handle it. I said through the door, "I told you already. The wedding has begun. You made a decision." She began to cry, followed by loud, untidy sobs that reverberated through the door. I couldn't allow her back in, even though it pained to hear her like that. Not after everything. She eventually departed. Tears were running down her cheeks as I watched her drive away. A part of me felt torn out, but it also felt like a weight had been lifted. I received a ton of messages that night, her family, friends, and even some of our mutual acquaintances. She sincerely apologizes. "You should speak with her," they said. However, I was unable to. Not quite yet. Perhaps never. The truth of what I had done began to sink in after Mia departed that day. It wasn't just a postponed wedding. It was called off. Completed. Our connection was the same. I initially experienced a strange sense of comfort, as though I had finally decided and was no longer subjected to the agony of it. However, such respite was short-lived. There were reminders of her wherever I looked. She collected these dumb, tiny magnets from every vacation we took. She still has her favorite cup in the sink. Everyone said we looked like the ideal pair in the framed photo of us from her cousin's wedding last year. The flat seemed to be making fun of me. I considered packing everything and delivering it to her parents' place, but my stomach turned at the mere notion of seeing her mother's face. I shut the door and left everything in the spare room, out of mind and out of sight. Correct. The texts continued to arrive. Companions, family, acquaintances at random. Everyone was curious about the outcome. Some others sent sincere comments of support such as, "I'm so sorry you're going through this," or "Tell me if you require anything." Others, though, weren't so generous. Some of our common acquaintances began to protest. "Are you really canceling a wedding because of this?" Among them, one wrote, "She didn't be unfaithful to you. She recently traveled with her pals. You're overreacting, don't you think? Are you overreacting? Every time I heard that term, I became enraged. I wasn't going overboard. It has nothing to do with the trip. It has to do with how she handled it. She didn't just purchase a ticket at the last minute. She abandoned me. She disregarded everything I sent and called, and she pretended that I was being irrational when I eventually discovered her location. She was an experienced practitioner. To one of the more tenacious pals, I replied in writing. She made up her mind. She must now cope with it. Her parents were unyielding. For a week, they begged me to speak with her over the phone every day. She is inconsolable. Her mother said that she was aware of her error. Her father even attempted to guilt-trip me at one point. He responded, "You've been together for 6 years. Will you truly discard everything because of one poor choice?" That sentence stayed with me. One poor choice. But was it truly simply one poor choice, or did it portend something more serious? She mentioned on the phone that she wanted life experiences before getting married, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. It appeared as though she was already hating the life we were creating. I was also unable to unhear that particular sorry. My parents eventually became involved. I'm not sure if we just got around to it or if Mia's family phoned. However, my mother texted me one evening. "We must speak." She wasted no time when I phoned her back. "What's happening?" she inquired. "The wedding has been canceled. Why?" I attempted to clarify, but it didn't seem to register. "Why can't I just forgive her and move on?" She kept interrupting. "Humans are fallible," she remarked. "You're also not flawless." It hurt. You know? I wasn't flawless, of course. Nobody is. However, this was not a little dispute over who should clean the dishes or where to have supper. 2 weeks prior to our wedding, my fiancé left me to go to a party in another nation. I responded, "Mom, it's not just the trip. It's how she responded to it. I was not respected by her. She showed us no respect." She let out a sigh. "I just believe you're making a grave error." The conversation ended at that point. A few days later, I received an email from Mia's pals, which was the tipping point. A real email, not simply a DM or an SMS. They must have assumed that I would block them on all other accounts. Thus, this was their final option. The statement began with a haphazard apology. "We apologize for the outcome," they wrote. As I read on, it became evident that they weren't expressing regret for what they had done, even if we didn't intend for it to get this far. They were attempting to assign me the responsibility. She was eagerly anticipating the excursion they had planned. We believed it would help her unwind because she has been so anxious about the wedding. "We were surprised by your response. React in this manner?" As if it were my fault for being angry when my fiancé vanished without saying anything. The worst aspect, they acknowledged that they had urged her to disregard me. "We assured her that your texts were not a concern." They composed. "We assumed you would calm down when she returned. Take a break." While they were partying with my fiancé halfway over the world, they assumed I would cool off. I didn't even read the entire email. I blocked their address and removed it. By the week's conclusion, I was at my breaking point now. As parents, I texted them to let them know she could stop by to get her belongings. I had no intention of dropping it off or staying for a major emotional altercation. "Tell her to come, please," I wrote when I wasn't at home. Her mother phoned me right away. "Just talk to her, please," she pleaded. "She hasn't stopped weeping. She isn't eating. She's not sleeping. She must see you." Before she boarded the plane, she had to see me. That silenced her when I said it. For the first time since her return, Mia texted me the next day. "Can we have a conversation?" she composed. I didn't need an explanation. I just wanted to provide it. I already had all the information I required. "I apologize," I said. "It's too late." She didn't answer. I assumed I would feel better by the time she arrived to get her belongings. As if I could finally go past this whole situation. But I had this strange pang in my chest as I watched her dad carry box after box out to the car. This was not the intended conclusion. Together, we were meant to be creating a life, making plans for the future, and aging alongside one another. All of that was gone now. Her father approached me and shook my hand once they were finished. He apologized that it had to end this way. "Me too," I said. Mia remained silent. Like us, she simply got into the car and drove off. I sat in the vacant apartment that evening and gazed at the boxes she had left behind. Letters, pictures, little mementos from our travels. I couldn't bring myself to discard them, not quite yet. I pushed them inside the closet instead, then shut the door. She is being picked up by the days after me. It was quiet, but not in the serene sense I had hoped for. It was so quiet that it felt like the apartment's walls were closing in on you. I had no one to call or text for the first time in years. I was often reminded of her when I checked social media. I had previously banned her pals, so they began attempting to contact me in different ways. Two of their mutual acquaintances who had not yet chosen a side attempted to mediate the situation. Mia truly feels bad about what they told me. You ought to speak with her. Just one discussion. I said the same thing to them. I told the others, "It's finished. Stop bringing this up, please." However, the pressure persisted. I believed some of my friends would support me, but they began to turn against me. "You're being self-centered." One of them sent a text message. After 6 years of dating her, "You're discarding everything because of your ego." That term once more, ego. As if she couldn't enjoy herself without me and I was some sort of control freak. That wasn't the point. Trust was at issue. Regarding deference. However, my parents were unyielding, so I blocked that buddy. They always raised me up when I spoke to them. "Give her a chance, please." For the third time in a row, my mother admitted that she had made a mistake. She's young, though. Both of you are. She's not too young to be able to speak. My dad said, "Son?" as I snapped. Sometimes it's necessary to consider the wider picture. Are you truly prepared to let one argument ruin 6 years? I claimed it wasn't a battle, it was a decision. And she decided to go. They failed to grasp it, most likely they wouldn't. A week later, when I went to my parents' house to get some of my old belongings, I had a falling out with them. In the kitchen, my mother cornered me and began her standard tirade. She mentioned that she had been phoning us. She is inconsolable. Shouldn't you at least give her a chance to speak? "No, Mom," I answered, attempting to seem composed. She continued, "You know she's a good girl. She simply became engrossed in the situation. She still loves you despite this." That's when I lost it. She wouldn't have done this if she truly loved me. The narrative is over. My mother appeared as though I had smacked her. After that, she remained silent. I could also see that things would change when I went, in the midst of everything. Once more, Mia's college pals got in touch. They texted me from a different number this time. We only wanted to apologize once more for the incident. It read, "We had no intention of things getting this terrible." I didn't answer at all. When they persuaded Mia to disregard me and remain in Spain, they had already made their stance apparent. They continued texting, even though their apologies were now meaningless. "She is unhappy without you." Among them, one wrote, "She will stop at nothing to make this right. Speak to her, please." The number was blocked by me. The problem is that I wanted to go on. One day I hope to wake up without feeling as though my life had suddenly fallen apart. However, each time I made an attempt, someone else would pull me back into the chaos. Her family, our mutual acquaintances, and even others who hardly knew us were offering their opinions as if they had the authority to dictate to me what I should do. Work was the only thing that helped. I began putting all of my effort into my work and working every shift I could. Whenever feasible, staying late. At least it diverted my attention, even though it was exhausting. Additionally, I started going to the gym because I needed anything to get out of the home, not because I had some big plan to win the breakup or brighten up. It started off as a simple method to pass the time, but soon became into a habit and a diversion. I received a text from Mia's parents 2 weeks after she picked up her belongings. Her father wrote, "She wants to speak with you." For closure, only one talk. Resolution? I gave a sour laugh at that word. When she departed for Spain, closure didn't matter to her. When she ignored my calls and urged me to handle it myself, she showed no concern. She want closure now. I didn't respond. I met her at a coffee shop a month later. Since the day she arrived to get her belongings, I had not seen her, and I was unprepared for it. She was glued to her phone when she sat near the window. In some way, she appeared older and exhausted. I went cold. I wanted to get out of there before she noticed me, but she looked up before I could turn around. Time seemed to pause for a second as our eyes locked. She waved and gave a little grin. After a moment of hesitation, I approached her table. "Hello." Softly, she said, "Hello." After a few moments of awkward standing, she pointed to the chair across from her. "Are you willing to sit?" I did, but we didn't discuss the wedding, the vacation, or anything else that had caused us to fall apart. Rather, we engaged in small chat. She informed me about her recent employment. I shared mine with her. It was courteous, almost aloof, as if we were reuniting with old friends. I felt weird once. I eventually left, not quite depressed, simply empty. It was that interaction that opened my eyes. I would never be able to get the closure I desired, not from her, not from anybody. Accepting that certain things don't make sense and that some wounds don't heal properly was the only way to move on. That's what I've been attempting to do. I gave Mia a lot of consideration after our encounter at the coffee shop, not in a hypothetical way. We'll sort of get back together. It's more like attempting to comprehend the last 6 years. What went wrong? Was there anything I could have done differently? Was I too severe? Too rigid? I was plagued by such questions. Late at night, when it was too quiet in the flat, I would mentally review everything. She chuckled the first time we met in college, how certain we had been of our future together and how we had spent the entire night discussing our dreams, memories spanning 6 years. And yet, here we were. Now, strangers. About 3 months after the separation, I began going to therapy. It was advised by a close friend who had supported me through all of this. I didn't first believe I needed it. "I'm all right. I just need time," I told her. However, time was not on our side. Something would pull me back each time I thought I was progressing. One of the memories. Someone who was unaware of the nuptials sent an SMS. The radio even plays a random tune. It was draining. The initial treatment session was uncomfortable. I had no idea where to begin. I simply blurted out that I had called off my planned marriage. After nodding, the therapist urged me to elaborate. All of the resentment, perplexity, and shame I had been holding within came out as I spoke. I felt as though I had completed a marathon by the conclusion of the session. Therapy helped me unload a lot of stuff I wasn't even aware I was carrying, but it didn't solve everything right away. I began to realize that a large portion of my rage stemmed from deeper problems rather than just the trip. I could see how differently we saw our relationship by the way Mia had handled things. Marriage was a collaboration to me. Because it was required of her, it appeared to her that she was doing it. One of the questions the therapist asked me has stayed with me. "Do you believe you would have been aware of these disparities sooner if this hadn't occurred?" I gave that a lot of thinking. We may have spent years together before figuring out we weren't compatible if the wedding had gone on. Perhaps it was best that it was over now. I began to put more of an emphasis on myself, despite the excruciating pain. I was no longer merely going to the gym. I was establishing objectives. In the mornings, I began running, something I had never done before. I got sick of getting takeaway every night, so I enrolled in a cooking class. My workplace turned to become a haven for me. I offered for additional work, put myself into projects, and after a few months, I even received a tiny promotion. I didn't care if my coworkers made fun of me for becoming a workaholic. It was preferable than languishing at home. About 6 months after the separation, Mia sent me a single SMS. It wasn't long, just a basic one. I hope all is okay with you. Unsure of how to react, I gazed at the message for a while. I wanted to say something in response, but I also wanted to disregard it. Just to... not to reignite anything. I'm not sure. Recognize the time we had together? Finally, I said, I am. I hope so too. I didn't mind that she didn't text me back. I still didn't talk to my parents too often. They were so engrossed in the notion that Mia and I would make the ideal pair that they failed to recognize how poisonous things had gotten by the end. They would dismiss my attempts to explain as being theatrical or unyielding. I realized I couldn't keep trying to win their acceptance, even if it hurt. I began to celebrate holidays with friends rather than family, and to be honest, I liked it more that way. I became aware that I felt lighter a year after the wedding that never happened. Though not particularly joyful, the burden of everything that had transpired had been lifted. I had lost my anger. I wasn't worrying if I'd made the correct decision or rehashing our chats in my mind all the time. At the wedding of a mutual acquaintance, I ran into Mia again. She had a new partner. I was too. Though neither of us went close to the other, we smiled politely at each other across the room. I became aware that I wasn't depressed when I danced with my partner later that evening. I didn't feel envious. Nothing was over with me. In retrospect, I believe that calling off the wedding was the wisest move I have ever done. It was really gut-wrenching, nasty, and awful. However, it made me face issues that I may have otherwise overlooked. Over the previous year, I discovered a lot about myself. I gained the ability to assert my needs in a relationship and establish limits. I discovered that even after years of dedication, it's acceptable to give up on something if it isn't helping you anymore. Above all, I discovered that sometimes the only way to proceed is to let go. Assuming you've read this far, I appreciate you reading. Although I have no idea where life will lead me next, I am eager to find out for the first time in a long time. Remain resilient and don't accept anything less than what you are due. Story. 3. Golden Child. My fiancée got pregnant because of my brother, so after we didn't communicate for 5 years, my family left me. My mother has demanded that I take over as his child substitute father while he's in a coma. My entire existence fell apart on a normal, cool October evening. I had been in love with Karen since our junior year of high school, and we were only a month away from getting married at the age of 30. Together, we had experienced everything: graduation, prom, and the chaotic college dorm life. We were on the verge of embarking on what I believed to be the most exciting and successful phase of our life. Everything was planned for the wedding. Excitement was in the air once the invitations were sent out, or so I believed. I had arrived home early from work that evening with the intention of surprising Karen with supper at our favorite Italian restaurant. I entered a chilly ambush instead of the cozy, welcoming house I had anticipated. It wasn't odd that my parents were present, but the uncomfortable mood was strong enough to cut through. Karen appeared to be about to cry as she sat on the couch. It was strange that my brother Chris, whose car was sitting outside, was not present. "Take a seat. We must speak." With an uncharacteristically severe tone, my mother said, nothing could have prepared me for what was about to happen. But it was obvious that something was wrong. My dad didn't look at me. He simply sat there and looked down at his hands. My mind was racing with concerns just from that. Karen's voice was tremulous as she began speaking. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea how to explain this to you, and I didn't intend for it to occur." Unable to continue her statement, she drifted off. The rest was shouted out by my mother. "Karen is expecting a child." I was momentarily unable to comprehend the words. Expecting a child. However, how? We have exercised caution. This was supposed to take place following the wedding. Chris entered at that point. His normally assured stride had turned into a shuffling pace, and his face was pallid. He also refused to look at me. As he stood behind Karen and took her hand in his, the place seemed oppressive. Just that gesture was like a kick to the stomach. I own it. When Chris finally spoke, it was no more than a whisper, yet it was loud enough to rock my world. I own the baby. The hours that followed were a haze. Chris and Karen described how they had begun dating soon after Karen and I were engaged. Small chat at the start led to confessions of feelings that Chris reportedly had since high school. Feelings. A few days after our engagement celebration, he decided to act at that very time. Their treachery started when Karen, enmeshed in the tornado of his revelation, did the same. I recall searching for my parents' approval or some clue that they recognized the wrongness of this. My mom seemed almost rebellious, but my dad looked humiliated. She quickly used phrases like, "It's done now," to defend the entire situation. The baby is what matters. You'll simply have to accept that they are in love. Embrace it. My brother, my fiancé, an impending baby. There was no laughing, yet it seemed like a twisted joke. Just the roar of my heart exploding. Accusations and explanations rushed around the room. Karen begged me to realize that she couldn't deny her love for Chris and to understand. Chris, who generally avoided the difficult topics, stood there largely mute, letting the women speak. My mother's position was unambiguous. In her opinion, Chris was the ideal child, and nothing he did could be wrong, not even taking the fiancé of his brother. "You're going to move aside and they're going to be together," she said icily. The dispute got out of hand. People spoke up. I felt incredibly alone in the midst of the turmoil as the tears spilled. It was obvious who was loyal to whom. The lady I loved, the brother I had admired, the family I believed I had. They all chose one another above me, over what was just and equitable. The days that followed were a whirlwind of feelings. The house was abandoned by me. I moved into a little apartment with Karen. I brought the puppy we had adopted jointly, along with a few clothing and my necessities. Everything else was irrelevant. I informed the few acquaintances I trusted about the cancellation of the wedding. Although their indignation on my behalf was somewhat consoling, it didn't help to lessen the sting of betrayal. My family, on the other hand, came together to support Chris and Karen's new union as though it were a reason to rejoice. I couldn't bring myself to reply to my dad's emails, which were a combination of apologies and attempts to explain the inexplicable. The betrayal was too profound, the agony too recent. Consequently, I severed all connections. I declined any attempts at reconciliation, banned them on social media, and changed my phone number. I had made my decision and they had made theirs. Although it was the most difficult choice I had ever made, it was also the most liberating. No longer constrained by the need to forget and forgive. Without my brother's shadow or Karen's ghost following me about, I began to reconstruct my life according to my own terms. This is how I got here. I'm still putting my life together 5 years later. I'm still perplexed by how everything went so poorly. But now with an unexpected call. And the past came roaring back in demanding attention, with a demand that was both cruel and ridiculous. I wasn't certain that I was prepared to offer. That's a long time. 5 years. Long enough to start a new career, relocate to a different city, meet new people, and even resume dating. Following the breakup, or rather the explosion of my former life, I did all of that. I moved to a busy metropolis where no one knew my name or my background, from a tiny village where everyone knew one other. In equal parts, it felt horrifying and freeing. I discovered a little apartment in a bustling area of the city, but I furnished it with brand new furnishings and a large collection of books, anything to break the stillness that would otherwise be filled with my thoughts. I was hired by a computer business in a position I never would have thought of for myself, but I ended up really enjoying it. My co-workers were a varied group, and before long, I was going out on the weekends with them to see the city, sample new foods, and sometimes forget the past. It was more difficult to date. My first serious relationship had been with Karen, and after the betrayal, I was hesitant to put my full confidence in her. Once more, However, life has a tendency of taking you by surprise. And roughly a year following the move, at a gaming night with common friends, I got to know Ella. She had a laugh that could light up a room, and she was bright and knowledgeable. To her credit, Ella was patient as we got off to a slow start. She was aware of enough of my background to comprehend my hesitancy, but not enough to make her feel threatened. Even if I made a new life for myself, the old one nevertheless managed to infiltrate at peaceful times. When the sounds of the city subsided and I was left to think alone, the nights were the most difficult. I'd worry how my family was doing and if they ever mentioned me. I would imagine Chris and Karen having the life that was meant to belong to me, bringing up a child who may have been mine in an other life. Although it had scabbed over, the wound had never completely healed. My sole remaining connection to my former life was a few family members who would periodically provide me with updates on family matters, carefully leaving out any information on Chris and Karen. I was aware that my parents had welcomed Karen into the family wholeheartedly, hosting an extravagant baby shower for her, assisting them in moving into a larger home, and doing everything they could to support their new existence. My family had clearly chosen their side, and they all appeared to be content, or so I believed. Then my mother called me out of the blue. After years of silence, I was startled to see her name flash on my phone. I didn't respond. Before sending an email, she made a couple more attempts. "I have to speak with you immediately," it said. That was all. No excuses, no justifications. It's just a time requirement, as though the previous 5 years had never occurred. My curiosity overcame me. After all this time, I wanted to know what could possibly be so important. Was there an emergency in the family? Sickness? A worse thing? But in spite of my roiling rage and damaged feelings for my family, I felt a weird nagging. The next day, I gave her another call, prepared for whatever it may be. When she responded, her voice was tremulous and filled with tears. I was surprised. "Chris is here." Between sobbing, she managed to say, "He has experienced an accident. A poor one." My heart fell. Chris was still my brother in spite of everything. It was the same brother I had admired as a child. I learned how to ride a bike from that person, who protected me from bullies. His treachery had altered our relationship irrevocably, but it did not erase the history we had. What took place? My voice was more steady than I felt when I asked. A hit and run occurred. Are the physicians aware that he is in a coma? They are unsure if he will awaken. As she finished speaking, her voice cracked, and I felt sorry for her. For Chris. The news was more devastating than I had anticipated, even for Karen. Before the betrayal, I would have rushed to the hospital to be there, just like I would have in any other emergency. However, another aspect of me resisted, wary and scarred by the wounds of the past. "St. Mary's is where he is," my mother went on. "I believed you ought to be aware." I believe she paused. "I think having you here would mean a lot." I didn't make any commitments. "I'll give it some thought." That's all I said before hanging up. The remainder of the day passed in a haze. I went through the motions at work, had beers with pals, and laughed when I felt like it. However, my thoughts were elsewhere. That night, as well as many nights after seeing the picture of Chris, perhaps dead in a hospital bed, made it difficult to fall asleep. I was haunted. It served as a sobering reminder of how swiftly things can change in life and how easily someone might pass away. It reminded us of our early years and our family before the rift. It caused me to consider if it was worthwhile to cling onto the grudge I had held. Should the worst occur? However, there was also rage. Why now? Why get in touch with me only during emergencies? Was family significant only when it was practical? I was uneasy as these questions swirled in my head without any answers. The days stretched throughout the week, and the situation became more urgent. It was frustrating how little information there was. Was he improving? Even worse. Likewise, I thought about asking my dad for further information, but I was hesitant. When I last saw him, he had taken my mother's side and was backing Chris and Karen without considering me. And then there was another call, this time with a request so ridiculous that it made me feel even more alienated and caused my mother to cry and beg for help, asked for something far more important than simply my presence. Her request was for me to defend Karen and the child. If Chris failed to show up to take his place, to be the necessary family for them, I was blown away. This was their request after years of quiet. Not healing, not reconciliation, but replacement. It was so daring that I couldn't even speak, torn between the pain of new wounds and the attraction of old allegiances. I didn't want to speak to her and damage my already high level of annoyance. To make matters worse, I simply hung up. I blocked her again after that. I made an effort to carry on with my day normally. After that, though, I couldn't get Chris and Karen's struggles out of my head, and I felt sorry for them. However, I was clearly not going to follow my mother's instructions and replace my brother in their family because that was just strange. He was still alive. Although he had recently fallen into a coma, she was behaving as though he had already died. I was feeling really uneasy about the whole thing. I believed that my father would be more sensible than my mother, so later that day I made the decision to call him instead. After 5 years of not communicating, it was somewhat odd to talk to him again, but after a little banter, I asked him how Chris was doing, and he informed me that things were not going well at the moment. I expected him to have some sensible insight after I told him about the talk I had with my mother earlier that day. But he also said that my mother was right to expect that from me. That was rather unexpected, as my father was typically the more composed of my two parents. Even now, when I asked him if he truly meant what he was saying, he was acting strangely. He admitted to me that he did, adding that I am a member of the family and that Karen and I have a history together anyhow, regardless of how our relationship has been over the last 5 years. After all, I am blood. Therefore, if anybody can be relied upon to defend the family, it should be me. Furthermore, my mother has realistic expectations. I honestly don't know what to do at the moment, because that truly caught me off guard. I've been avoiding talking to anybody about my family, even my other relatives, for the past week, because I'm terrified that someone would bring this up, and I'll have to defend my choices. I also feel like the evil person in this situation since I know how much my family depends on me, yet I'm not standing up for them, at least emotionally, if not monetarily. To be honest, I don't know what to do. I am also aware of how strange and irrational my mother's request is. On the other hand, I regret completely dismissing it. I feel so strange about this whole thing that I haven't even gone to the hospital to see my brother. I have also been unable to discuss this with any of my friends, because this is all really personal. They are aware of the strained relationship that has existed between my family and myself ever since my wedding was put off. But to be honest, this is a little more bizarre than that. And for that reason, I'm writing this on Reddit right now because I genuinely believe I need some unbiased advice on what I should do and if I should go see my friends or relatives. Everyone will have a prejudiced opinion of some kind. If I don't find a workable answer to all of this soon, I'm going to go crazy. Therefore, I truly need guidance. Sincerely, I feel as like I'm returning to the time in my life when I was preoccupied with Karen and Chris, immediately following my discovery that she had been unfaithful. That was a really dark time, and because it has taken me a long time to get over it, I don't want to return. In order for me to at least divert my attention, please share everything anyone has to say, regardless of how severe their viewpoint may be. So when my brother had an accident, am I the jerk for not going to visit my family and help them? One update. Hello, everyone. I so made the decision to postpone seeing my family for the time being. Right now, it's just too much for me. Because of what my parents were telling me, I was unaware of how severe my anxiety had been over the last week. However, I'm currently taking my anxiety medications again and attempting to manage things. Many people have shown their love and support for me in the comments area of my initial article, and some have even DM'd me directly to let me know that I'm not alone and that they are there for me. For this, I am really thankful. I'm really grateful for it. Additionally, I've confided in a few of my close friends about what's happening since I don't think I can handle this without their help. Additionally, they have assured me that I may contact them at any time. To get everything off my chest, they have also informed me that I should not go see them at this time because it is the greatest choice I can make for myself at this time, and I must prioritize my needs over those of others during this difficult time. Chris and my family have always prioritized themselves so far, so I need to follow suit. In all honesty, I don't feel like I have to provide them with emotional support either. They have one another. They are capable of doing this independently. After the wedding was called off and I discovered that my own parents had cheated on me, I was the one who had no support from anyone in my immediate family. They turned against me and chose my brother over me, even though he was the one who had sinned and ought to have been the one to leave the family. However, I'm attempting to put things behind me and move on. If I return to them, I won't be able to accomplish it. As a result, I have blocked them all once more, and will continue to maintain my resolve to avoid communication with them. I sincerely apologize for my brother's ordeal, and wish him a speedy recovery since, regardless of his actions, I cannot be the one to wish for anyone's ill luck. So, I'm hoping that everything works out for them, but I'm leaving this place. Now, I'm simply going to concentrate on my own mental health, and because of how I handled this and how these things my parents said bothered me, I'm thinking about returning to therapy. I don't think I'm handling all of this as well as I thought I was. Therefore, I truly believe I need to go to a professional. Additionally, all of those old emotions are resurfacing. I'm going to take care of myself now. The second update, I have been informed by a few family members that my brother's condition is still rather serious and is not getting better. He had remained in the hospital for about 2 weeks. The family is in a terrible situation, and I'm sad for them, but there isn't much I can do. At least once in the last 2 weeks, everyone who knows my family has visited my brother in the hospital to give their sympathies for the horrific catastrophe that occurred away from me. That's what I would have done. However, I also learned from my relatives that my parents have been disparaging me to anybody who has been paying them a visit and have been painting me as the villain. They are reportedly telling everyone that I was invited to visit them and be there for the family. But I declined. And they accused me of saying things like, "My brother deserved this," and "This was karma for screwing me over 5 years ago." Just so you know, I didn't say anything like that. Since I'm usually a kind person to everyone, it didn't seem like anything I would say, so several of them got in touch with me to ask if this was genuine or not. I told them that I didn't say these things and that my parents were fabricating it to make me seem like a bad person when they questioned me about it, most likely a response on my part, or simply like that, as my parents are the type of folks that are like that. Considering that they had already ruined my life once, I was just really unhappy that they were making up tales and saying such things about me in order to paint me as a villain. I consider myself fortunate that my family questioned me about it, since I doubt that anybody in the family would have been talking to me at this time if they had just decided to trust my parents. Although I haven't spoken to my parents in 5 years, my aunts, uncles, cousins, and the rest of my family have all supported me. I suppose my parents couldn't take it enough to eat? I truly didn't want to lose it. They thus made the decision to attempt to ruin that for me as well. Why they despise me so much is beyond me. Literally, I have never harmed them. Although my brother and I have never been really close, and my parents have always harbored affection for him since we were young, this feels needless and over the top. The third update. Hello. My mother decided to get in touch with me once again today after I posted an update 2 days ago. She was forced to visit me in order to speak with me because I had blocked them elsewhere. She was thus already waiting for me when I returned home from work. Since I was already so worn out from work, I honestly didn't feel like talking to her at all. She saw me and I had to go talk to her, even though I was on the verge of getting back in the car. It would be quite difficult to get rid of her if I allowed her to live in my home. Therefore, I had no intention of doing so. I chose to speak with her in the front yard, which ended up being really detrimental to me since she finally just began ranting at me, which caught the neighbors' attention as well. The start of the chat was rather standard. I had to give her a kind response when she struck up a conversation with me. However, I couldn't resist asking her why she had been spreading false information about me in order to paint me as a villain. I told her that it was unfair to me since, despite the way my family had treated me, I had never hoped for anything negative to happen to them, and I genuinely simply wanted to go on with my life. However, they were making it extremely difficult for me to do even that. For a very long time, I have been suppressing these emotions. I couldn't help myself, so it just gushed out of me when I saw her. Ultimately, I just informed her that I found it quite difficult to consider them family after everything that had transpired, as they had never treated me in such a manner, and their actions really disappointed me. I just got home from work, so I wasn't in the mood to argue or talk to anyone about anything that was too emotionally taxing, so whatever it was she had come to talk to me about could wait. When I told her that I did not want to talk to her at that time, she became very angry and said that she was only here to apologize for the same things that I had mentioned. She also claimed that she and my father had been thinking clearly. Until then, she had been listening to me calmly. They were originally quite upset with my attitude since I had declined to defend my family and even pay my brother a visit when he was in the hospital. However, they had come to the realization that I was still clearly extremely unhappy over the fact that they hadn't exactly treated me well during the previous 5 years, and for that reason, I wasn't going. She believed that the family should remain together for the purpose of emotional stability at this time, so she had come here to talk to me and attempt to work things out between us. She altered her mind, however, and opted to shout at me when I informed her that I did not want to talk to her. After my reaction to hearing about my brother's accident, she said, "I guess I should just be thankful that I still have a family, because I had half the will to cut me off and make sure the rest of my relatives stopped speaking to me forever." She clarified that she seemed to think my response had not been depressing enough since I didn't understand what she was talking about. When I found out about my brother's mishap, she said that she had assumed that when I was informed of my brother's injury, I would at least display some emotion, but I had no idea what she had expected me to do. On the phone conversation, however, I had sounded quite different. Naturally, I was going to be impacted by that news regardless of our personal relationships, and it has. Like I already stated, despite our close personal ties, I do not wish it upon anyone, including my family. Thus, when I learned of his accident, I was undoubtedly distressed. She might not have been able to see my face during the phone call, but her justifications were utterly nonsensical and without any basis. She continued by saying that my failure to support Karen and my nephew and to stand in for them when my brother was away demonstrated my lack of concern for the family. Once again, she was fabricating something to support their behavior, and because these things are so strange and superfluous, I genuinely believe that my parents have begun to lose their minds. In any case, I became even less interested in talking to her once she began ranting at me, so I simply went inside my house and asked her to go. She was still screaming at me when I finally opened the door to my house and entered. She attempted to follow me inside, but I slammed the door in her face and ordered her to go because I was furious and didn't want to talk to her anymore. She argued with me, but before she went, she cursed at me and threatened to punish me for this in the near future. I warned her that I would contact the police. I have no idea what that implies. I'm not even curious to find out what that implies. All I want to do is unwind and go about my life. The fourth update. Hi there. After 26 days following the tragedy, my family was finally able to share some positive news with everyone today. They obviously didn't individually inform me about it. It was my cousins who told me about it. The good news, though, is that my brother is at last starting to get well. He is responding well and is no longer in a coma. That's encouraging. I sincerely hope he can make it and that he just gets better from now on. Because despite the fact that I was expelled from the family a long time ago, the past month has been extremely stressful for everyone, including myself. However, I've learned that my parents are insane from the way they've been after my life during the last 26 days. Additionally, I believe they were simply venting their annoyance on me, following my most recent conversation with my mother, which I discussed in my last update. After a few days without hearing from her, my father phoned to come see me. I was unable to identify him since he used a different number than his typical one. I didn't even have time to hang up when I discovered it was him, since he began ranting at me, practically as soon as I answered the phone. He was also rather astute about it. Rather than phoning me at any regular time, he sought to surprise me so he might have a chance to yell at me during the day. When he knew I would be asleep and would have to get up to accept his call, my mind would be all hazy, so he chose to contact me at 5 in the morning. So a few days after I spoke with my mother, my father called me at 5 in the morning. I answered the fourth phone call and he started screaming at me, telling me that I was an unappreciative child and that he wished I had never been born. He added that because I was a bad person for not even bothering to see my brother in the hospital while he was in so much pain, and for not being there for the family, he would make sure the rest of the family never spoke to me again. I was still trying to take in all that was happening, so he hung up after yelling for about 5 minutes. At the moment it occurred, he hung up the phone and blocked me before I could finish it. It wasn't particularly humorous. However, I now think it's humorous since my parents are so determined to paint me as a villain and scold me for no apparent reason. These are the only reasons they are prepared to go to such lengths. As I mentioned before, I thought they were venting their annoyance on me. All they had to do was get out of court. I had to be there for the family as usual. The rest of the family knows that I'm right. Therefore, it's okay that my father was unable to persuade them against me. They are also aware of what transpired 5 years prior. Anyway, I just hope they stop bothering me and simply concentrate on my brother now that his condition is getting better. The fifth update. Hi there. Returning here after nearly 3 years seems really strange. Since then, a lot has transpired, much of it for the better. Due to job, I currently reside in Germany. It's been a 1.5 years since I moved here, and I've also begun dating. For the past 8 months, my girlfriend and I have been dating, and we are quite happy. Additionally, I have had no communication with my family at all for the last 3 years, which has also been lovely. It's different because, if I'm being honest, I've stayed in touch with my family members that treat me well. Now my brother is all well. He is doing well now, despite the fact that it took him a long time to return to normal after the accident. After my brother had begun to recover, Karen came to me to chat and apologized for all that had happened in the past. I just informed her that she didn't need to apologize at this time. After everyone had learned that I was relocating to Germany for business, she came up to me and apologized on my brother's and her own behalf. She also brought me a flower. Because he was too embarrassed by what had transpired 8 years ago, my brother had not been to visit me, but in all honesty, it didn't matter anymore. I just told them that I didn't care and that I was forgiving of them. And it was true. Since I was going on to better things in my life, I didn't really care. I've been here ever since, and my parents no longer communicate with me. And I'm rather pleased about that because I would never, ever allow that to happen again. At last, I'm content now. Anyway, I'd best get back to my life now that everyone is caught up. I am incredibly grateful to everyone who showed me love and care when I was blogging here. They also kept checking in with me in the comments and other places, even after I had stopped posting.